Seeds for Earth Episode 2. Chapter 6. The National Federation. The world, as it existed now, was not built on hope. It was forged in desperation. Humanity's survival had never been a certainty. It took the near annihilation of life on Earth to create something as powerful and relentless as the National Federation. Before its rise, humanity teetered on the brink. Global superpowers clashed first diplomatically, then economically, and eventually militarily. Cold wars turned hot. Borders became battlegrounds. Nuclear fire rained down. Cities vanished in seconds. Populations were decimated. Earth was left scorched and unrecognizable. Its skies choked with ash. Its oceans poisoned. Its lands radioactive and barren. From that devastation, the Federation emerged. It was a coalition of what remained. Fragmented nations from east, west, north, and south, unified under a single mandate: never again. Democracy was abandoned for discipline. Freedom for control. Survival took precedence. Among the rubble of history, one man dared to look forward. The father of Mr. Girthy. He was no general or politician, yet his vision would reshape humanity far more than any treaty or war machine. While governments scrambled to rebuild cities, he looked to the stars. Even then, he understood a painful truth. Earth's survival was temporary. His lunar factories began as mining stations, but they soon evolved into testbeds for expansion. His goal wasn't to restore the past. It was to leave it behind. From this ideology, the Seed Project was born. He believed salvation lay not in fixing what was broken, but in planting life elsewhere in systems untouched by human failure. Earth, in his eyes, was a lesson, not a legacy. When Mr. Girthy inherited the mission, he also inherited the burden. The Federation saw in him the architect of a new beginning, a future untethered from Earth's decline. But Girthy understood what his father hadn't. Survival alone wasn't enough. It required control. The Federation entrusted him with more than expansion. They entrusted him with the future itself. A future that must be orderly, secure, and above all unthreatened. That's why the Seed Project remained a secret. This wasn't just about launching life across the galaxy. It was about preempting risk, neutralizing threats before they rose. Wherever humanity went, it would go alone, or at least, go dominant. The mission was clear. Not just to plant life, but to shape it. To do that, they needed more than ships. They needed genetic blueprints. Engineered humans, stripped of the flaws that had doomed Earth: greed, aggression, tribalism, all coded out, rewritten from the molecular level. This wasn't evolution, it was design. The Seed Project became more than science. It became the Federation's ultimate contingency plan. Earth had been saved once. It would not survive again. Resources dwindled. Time slipped away. Even with global control, entropy loomed. So they looked outward, toward virgin systems and silent planets. They would not repeat the past. They would overwrite it. A new humanity. A curated genesis. And at its helm, Mr. Girthy. He had sacrificed as much as any soldier or martyr. His eyes, though calm, bore the quiet steel of a man who had chosen legacy over comfort. His compassion hadn't vanished. It had calcified, shaped by necessity. And the stars above, they did not care. They blinked indifferently, cold and distant, as if to say, even your greatest achievements are dust to us. But still, humanity reached for them. Chapter 7. Convergence. Youlieh's new life in the roots settled into a strained rhythm. Days blurred under artificial lights and clinical routines, tests, calibrations, briefings. The facility's pristine sterility stripped time of meaning, but the work gave her a fragile sense of purpose. Still, something was shifting. Each step into the lab felt less like discovery and more like surrender. Her science had once been about questions. Now it was about control. That morning, Axiko had tasked her with recalibrating one of the embryos, designed for survival on the mission's target planet. On the luminous screen, the organism's genome danced beneath her fingertips, intricate and alien, but her focus drifted. There was a growing unease in her chest, a gnawing sense that the seed project was not what it claimed to be. Gerthie's vagueness, Ryland's distance, their silence hinted at a deeper agenda. A soft chime broke her thoughts. Ryland's name blinked on her screen. Meet me in the observatory. No pleasantries, no context. But she rose anyway. The observatory offered something rare, simulated starlight. It made her feel small in a way that reminded her of who she used to be. Ryland stood beneath the projection dome, eyes distant, posture tight. You wanted to talk? She asked. He pointed. That star there just above the band of black. That is the one. She followed his gaze. It is the system. He nodded. A little over 4 light years, and we think. There is something there. Life, primitive, he said. But yes, she exhaled slowly, and our asteroid will wipe it out. His silence was answer enough. Why are you showing me this? She asked. Because I am not sure we are right, Ryland said quietly. But I know we are out of time, and someone has to act. They stood in silence, shadows cast in artificial starlight. Then Ryland gestured. Walk with me. They descended into the lower levels, passages rarely used. The air felt heavier here. The Federation is not just trying to expand, he said. They are trying to rewrite what it means to be human. They think our flaws, greed, aggression, chaos, are genetic, and they want to edit them out, she asked, chilled. You are not just creating life, Youlieh, you are building the template for our species. For every future descendant. The enormity of that settled like ice in her chest. But if we decide who humanity becomes, are we any better than the forces we fled from? Ryland's voice dropped. That is the gamble. Perfection, or something worse. They paused outside a steel door. Gerthie's quarters. He wants to see us. Her stomach tightened. About what? The next phase. Inside, Gerthie waited, poised, calm, impenetrable. Please sit, he said. I know you have doubts, he began. But what we do here is not a choice, it is survival. He laid it out plainly. The asteroid was ready. It carried not just genetic material, but code directives buried deep, meant to guide evolution toward human compatibility. It is not just seeding life, he said. It is preparing a world. In our image. She looked at Ryland. His eyes told her he already knew. Gerthie continued, voice low. Youlieh, I chose you because you see beyond data. You understand what is at stake. That is why I trust you. Her voice wavered. And if it goes wrong? Then we learn, he said simply. But to do nothing is extinction. They left in silence. When they reached the elevator, Ryland turned to her. If you could choose, he said, would you do it? Would you rewrite what it means to be human? She hesitated. Maybe that is not our question to answer. He nodded faintly. Then maybe our answer is already wrong. The doors closed behind them, sealing them once again in the depths of a future they could no longer outrun. Chapter 8. The Forgotten World. Youlieh stood alone in the lab, the dim lights casting soft shadows over the rows of equipment and specimens preserved in sterile glass cases. On the screen before her, the holographic images of Auras 4 rotated valleys, dense jungles, and vast plains untouched by civilization. The creatures moved with a quiet rhythm, their massive forms carving paths through forests, oblivious to the calculations unfolding light years away. Her steps had begun to feel heavier. Every day in this facility pulled her further from the reasons she became a scientist. But was survival worth the price of silence? Meet me in the observatory. Ryland's message had been brief. There were signs, delayed transmissions, data deviations, small, persistent ripples hinting at unseen resistance. In the observatory, Ryland stood with eyes fixed on the starscape. He gestured toward the display. We have intercepted clearer images of the species on Auras 4. You should see this. They watched, massive creatures moving slowly through green expanses. Thick, scaly bodies, powerful limbs, long tails, something ancient in their posture. Something eerily familiar. They resemble something prehistoric, she whispered. Rylan nodded. They are not just fauna. Their behavior. It suggests pattern. Awareness. The Federation sees them as threats. You mean to remove them? We must secure EvoSphere. They stand in the way. She watched a long-necked creature graze peacefully among towering trees, its movements unhurried. Ancient, they have existed for eons. Who are we to end that? Rylan hesitated, voice quiet. Because the Federation already decided. And once we act, there is no turning back. Silence followed. A shared weight. What if we are wrong? She asked. He shook his head. They do not care about what ifs. Back in her quarters that night, Youlieh lay sleepless, her thoughts orbiting the same question. Were these creatures just obstacles, or mirrors? Chapter 9. Echoes in the Dark. The next morning Youlieh awoke to the words echoing in her mind. Life deserves a chance to survive. There are more of us. The message had come anonymously, but it changed everything. She was not alone. The lab felt colder. The corridors tighter. Every face she passed, potential ally or silent watcher. Later, Rylan appeared. Cryonics lab. New genetic samples. He said, code. She followed. Inside, with the door sealed, he confessed. I got the message too. There is a network. Quiet resistance. They call themselves the Echoes. She blinked. It is real. He nodded. We delay, redirect, sabotage quietly. Just enough to buy time. Enough to search for another way. I want in, she said. You will have to be careful. One wrong step. She understood the risk. But the alternative was complicity. Over the next days, her routine became camouflage. Beneath it, quiet defiance. She began altering seed genomes, tiny tweaks to slow environmental change, to give EvoSphere's native species a fighting chance. Then one night she received a message. Tonight, Vault 22, midnight, come alone. She went there. She met Corin, chief engineer and Echo operative. Did not expect you. He said, but I am glad. Together, they worked, encrypting transmissions, spreading resistance, adjusting DNA subtle protections embedded in what the Federation believed were tools of control. Each night, Youlieh returned exhausted, but no longer hollow. She had found something worth risking everything for. A message blinked on her console. You are doing the right thing. The Echoes are with you. She smiled through tears. The creatures of EvoSphere would never know her name. But maybe, just maybe, they would survive long enough to never need to. Chapter 10. The Quiet Rebellion. The following days were soaked in silence and tension. Every glance, every word exchanged with the Echoes felt like walking a tightrope. Balanced precariously above the threat of exposure, Youlieh clung to the night shift, using its solitude to refine the genetic variations embedded in the seeded organisms. Each adjustment was a quiet act of rebellion, a whisper of resistance. Yet with every encoded sequence, she felt her isolation deepen. Rylan remained her only confidant, though even their exchanges had grown sparse-reduced to quick nods and carefully veiled phrases. Then, one evening, in the bustle of the central lab, Rylan approached with a casual murmur, his gaze darting toward the corridor. Tonight, he said softly, there is something you need to see. They met after lights out, slipping through dim back corridors Youlieh had never explored. Fans hummed behind the walls, and the air held a sterile chill. At the end of a narrow hallway, Rylan stopped before a sealed door, keyed in a code, and motioned her inside. The room beyond was small, dark, lined with aging monitors and hushed machinery. Although Youlieh had already seen glimpses of the creatures, this time felt different. The camera zoomed in toward the forest's edge. A smaller figure stepped into view, slick, agile, alert, its eyes glimmered, and in them Youlieh saw something that stopped her breath. Not instinct, not fear, awareness. These are the ones we need to protect, Rylan said. The Federation's plan would eliminate them first. They are social, adaptable. Their behavior suggests the roots of a primitive culture. She felt a sharp pang of sorrow. Do you think they know we are watching? He hesitated. I think they are beginning to, or soon will. A silence settled between them, heavy, inevitable. If we fail, she said, they are gone. And with them, Rylan replied, everything we once stood for. The next days blurred into anxious routine. Youlieh pushed her work further, encoding resilience, adaptability, defense, knowing each deviation risked exposure. Her hope lay in secrecy, and in the growing belief that resistance was not just possible, it was necessary. But then came the confrontation. Mr. Girthy appeared at her workstation, his eyes unreadable. Youlieh, he said evenly, your recent reports show a concerning shift in emphasis on genetic variability not outlined in our original directive. She steadied herself. Environmental volatility demands it. We need to ensure survivability, long term. Or, he said coldly, you are preparing for coexistence. A long silence followed. I am preparing for survival, she said quietly. His gaze narrowed. The Federation demands loyalty. That includes loyalty to purpose. The asteroid will clear the way. There is no need for coexistence. He turned and walked away without another word. But the message was clear. She was being watched. That night, in the quiet of the observatory, she and Rylan stood side by side. The stars cold and unblinking beyond the glass. He knows, she whispered. Rylan's jaw clenched. Then we need to be smarter. If he uncovers the echoes. He did not finish. He did not need to. Youlieh turned to him. Is this worth it, Rylan? The risk, the secrecy, is it worth what we are losing? Yes, he said without hesitation. Because if we do not try, if we stay silent, we are no different from them. We are still human, not the engineered creations the Federation wants to replace us with. If Oris 4 is lost, so be it. But we must make sure that our species remains truly ours. End of episode 2. To continue the story, look out for episode 3, Seeds for Earth.